Hello and welcome to Bangalore International Centre's very own podcast, BIC Talks. Bangalore International Centre is a platform for informed conversations, exchange of ideas, and a space for arts and culture. BIC Talks brings the essence of all that the physical space stands for and more to your doorstep.
Hi, I'm Pavan Srinath and welcome to BIC Talks. I have been podcasting for a little over 3 years now, and I can say with some certainty that in India we have never recorded a podcast with a general and an admiral in the same episode, and that too in conversation with each other. It's my privilege today to start the first such conversation. In 2020, we had the Chief of Defense Staff, a new position that was created in India, and the aim is for a better integration, planning, and operation of India's Army, Navy, and the Air Force. So to talk about all this and a lot more, joining us today are two decorated leaders, Admiral Arun Prakash, former Chief of Naval Staff and subsequently the Chairman of the Chief of Staff's Committee in India. And also with us is Lieutenant General Prakash Menon, who served in the Indian Army for 40 years and thereafter as military advisor and secretary to the Government of India in the National Security Council Secretariat. Admiral, General, welcome to BIC Talks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anchoring the discussion today is General Prakash Menon. So General Menon, over to you.
Thank you, Pavan. I look forward to actually doing this as a CDS story because it's a story which starts from the time of independence and is still ongoing because we have created one and in the process of rolling it out. So the CDS story is essentially three groups of actors. One is the political leadership. Second is the leadership of the armed forces, all three, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. And the third actor is the bureaucracy. Of course, these actors represents various institutions, but in this story, individuals also are prominent. So we'll start this story from 1947, and I can tell you there is no better person than Admiral Arun Prakash to tell this story because he has not only gone into the history of it, is also part of that history. So let us start, Admiral, from pre-independence actually. So over to you, Admiral.
Thank you, General. As you suggested, I'll just start a little before the end of World War II. This great conflict brought home to all the major combatants that there was much left to be desired as far as synchronizing the actions and planning of the three armed forces was concerned. So both the United Kingdom and USA, as soon as the war finished, they got together, not together, but individually, each country, people got together, mainly driven by the political establishment to see what they had done wrong during the war and how best to set it right for the future. And the thing that struck everybody in both countries was that there was lack of synergy between the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and it had led to infructuous effort, probably loss of life in many instances. So in both countries, they triggered off a mechanism by which they tried to implement measures which would bring in jointness, synergy, and coordination between the three armed forces. The USA enacted the Act of Congress of 1947, Armed Forces Act, which established ab initio sort of Ministry of Department of Defense and established a US Air Force, established a Secretary of State for Defense, and so on. Similarly, in the UK, they took many actions which would synergize the three armed forces and bring about economy of effort and so on. In India, we were passing through a very traumatic phase where the country was going to be split into two. The armed forces were going to be divided. So the government of India asked help from the British to help us devise a new system of higher defense. And fortunately, the Chief of Staff to Admiral Mountbatten, who was then the Viceroy Governor General, was a man called General Ismay, very experienced soldier. So he devised a ad hoc system which would serve the purpose required of it for a few years till India could stand on its own feet and devise a system which was suited to its own needs. This system essentially had a Chiefs of Staff committee with a rotational chairman consisting of three chiefs. And the Chiefs of Staff Committee would discuss and debate issues that impinged on all three services, produce policy plans and so on, and render advice to the defense minister. This was meant to be an ad hoc system, but unfortunately for us, it went on, possibly due to diffidence on part of the soldiers and lack of involvement, indifference on part of the politicians. Everybody thought that we are doing fine, so why change anything? So this went on for nearly 50 years. We remained in a group which was rooted in World War II, planning, systems, organizations, till we got a jolt in Kargil. The clandestine occupation of our territory by Pakistani irregular troops was an intelligence failure of the first order. We somehow managed to salvage the situation at great loss of life and gallantry of our armed forces. It is said, I'm no expert, but it is said that the tactics we followed in Kargil to retrieve lost territory were reminiscent of World War II, where masses of soldiers went up steep slopes and so on. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the shock of Kargil jolted the government of the day, and they convened a body called the Kargil Review Committee, headed by a person who was a well-known strategist. He was originally an IAS officer, but he delved into the field of strategy and policy, Mr. K. Subramaniam, and he was assisted by a few soldiers and a journalist, and they produced the Kargil Review Committee report within a very short time. The primary finding of the Kargil Review Committee was that we are living in a time warp. Our armed forces are outdated in thinking and planning and organization. We have just been through the revolution in military affairs, the so-called. We have just become a nuclear weapon state, but our thinking, planning, organization are still rooted in World War II. So it is time to change. And it pointed out in very severe terms that India was unique in having an organization of higher defense, which was outside the Ministry of Defense. It was externalized by them, and it had to approach the ministry, the political executive, through the means of notes written on files. There was lack of consultation, etc. So given this severe indictment of the system, the government of the day moved once again to their credit with great alacrity and convened what has come to be known as the Group of Ministers of 2000. Once again, it was a collection of politicians headed by the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. L.K. Advani. And this group of ministers then convened 4 task forces to look into defense, intelligence, border management, internal security, etc. I was fortunate enough to be a member of the group which looked into defense reforms. It was headed by Mr. Arun Singh, who had been a politician at some point of time, a junior minister of defense. And this particular task force went into the intricacies of how and what needed to be changed. So I'll pause there, and General, if you have any.
Yes, I think I will just add a couple of things. Actually, in 1947, we had the Armed Forces chief was called the Commander-in-Chief. So he was also an operational commander. And that was changed in 1955. There's a little heartburn with the chiefs because they were not even consulted, and they were given the nomenclature, the title of Chief of Staff. What it implied was that it moved them away from the command to actually having a staff, more of a staff role. But actually it maintained the command, but the title was changed. But this was a heartburn. There was a sort of thing, it was announced in Parliament and the chiefs reacted. Also, at that time, and in fact, until 1965 and after, the army chief were the only 3-star. The others were actually 2-star generals, both the Air Force and the Navy. And it is only after 65 they were brought in on par. So while Mountbatten suggested this, Nehru was quite careful because of the lurking fear about the ascendancy which the army would gain in decision making, primarily seen from the environment in Asia itself and in Africa, where the military was gaining ground. And that was always at the back of their minds. And in fact, there is a conversation which General M.L. Chibber said that he had a letter from Admiral Mountbatten, who suggested just about a couple of years before the 1962 war to Nehru that we should have a CDS. And in that letter, Mountbatten told General Chibber that Nehru was actually willing to do it, but for the opposition from Krishna Menon, the defense minister. So we continued with the three armed forces operating separately, coming together when required through what we called inter-service cooperation. We learned lessons in 62, 65, 71, but the idea of CDS just did not come to fruition. Till, as the Admiral said, the Kargil conflict and that brilliant report by K. Subramaniam, followed by the group of ministers report, which is all available in the public domain, laid it down that we must have a CDS, amongst many other things. So I think the Admiral should tell us that how did and why did and what is given in the group of ministers report about what should be the role of the CDS and how did it actually come about, an agreement about the CDS.
Well, the Arun Singh task force was composed equally of serving officers. There was a retired vice admiral there. There were some IAS officers, defense accounts, and so on. I mean, there was an equal representation of bureaucracy and the service. Now, Mr. Arun Singh, although very knowledgeable about military matters, was frankly very skeptical that the armed forces were actually detached from the Ministry of Defense and outside it, what was called attached offices. They took no part in policy planning, decision making, etc. He was very skeptical, and it took a lot of persuasion on our part to convince him that it was so. So after a lot of deliberations, which took many months, a lot of people were consulted, retired, serving, people from all walks of life, media, etc. The consensus that the task force evolved was that we should have a chief of defense staff, one, who would be assisted by a vice chief of defense staff. The armed forces should be integrated amongst themselves or made joint, and the armed forces and the Ministry of Defense should be integrated. That means the civilian and the military components of the Ministry of Defense, as is everywhere else in the world, should be brought together and sit next to each other. So there's a bit of a compromise here and there, but it was a fairly reasoned and balanced recommendations, which was agreed upon, which was concurred with by the group of ministers and forwarded to the Government of India. But the Government of India in turn sent it back to the ministries, Ministry of Defense, Home Affairs, etc., where it was scrutinized by the bureaucracy. Now, unfortunately, there were various vested interests. The bureaucracy was opposed to essentially to having a chief of defense staff. They were opposed to jointness. They were also opposed to any integration between the armed forces and the civilian bureaucracy for various reasons. One more point, within the armed forces also, one must mention there was disagreement on the necessity of jointness, on the necessity of a chief of defense staff, etc. So all these factors combined to help those who were opposed to any significant reform. The net result was that the group of ministers report was essentially shelved, but a few salient points which made good public relations were pulled out and implemented. The salient issue which should have been implemented was the constitution of a chief of defense staff and consequent restructuring. That did not happen. What happened was that the name of the naval headquarters, army headquarters, air headquarters was changed. It was called Integrated Headquarters of the Ministry of Defense, in brackets, Army, Navy, Air Force. A very convoluted title, but it was supposed to convey that everything is integrated, all is well, nothing further needs to be done. So in short, some cosmetic changes which were quite innocuous were pulled out of the group of ministers report and implemented. The substantial operative part of this report was not implemented, and Chief of Defense Staff was the glaring omission left over from that era, which is now I'm talking about 2000, 2001.
So would I be correct to say that actually despite the group of ministers report having cabinet approval, when it came to implementation, it was actually sabotaged, and there were two elements which sabotaged it. One was, of course, the bureaucracy, which has not been very keen to have a CDS, and the other, I think, was, of course, the Indian Air Force, because I think I'm correct that even some service retired chiefs went to the Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, to say that this should not be done, and this is all in the public domain. I'm not giving out a secret. So it was left hanging, not implemented, and it is my experience from government that this is what happens to most of the reports. Even if it has cabinet approval, when it comes to implementation, and if it does not suit an institution or the turf, they normally try to just make sure it doesn't get implemented. And that's what I've seen even with Naresh Chandra committee report. So even after the recommendation of this for the CDS, it did not get implemented. And that is what happened. And it continued to be monitored. What is the progress of implementation? Governments changed till in 2011. I think the former National Security Advisor, Mr. Shiv Shankar Menon, decided that you can't continue to monitor for 10 years in implementation. We need to see as to what really requires to be done. So that is how the Naresh Chandra Committee, of which I was actually the coordinator for the National Security Council Secretariat, the Admiral was a member of that committee. And that committee was asked to review the national security system. And one of the things it did was about the issue of CDS. And the discussions there was about two main things which is relevant here. One was about the CDS, the other was about the integration of the armed services with the Ministry of Defense. So that report said, it didn't call it the Chief of Defense Staff, and it said that we should have a permanent chairman, Chief of Staff Committee. So that was what was the Naresh Chandra Committee's recommendation. And for integration, there was, I remember, a lot of discussion taking place, but the civilian bureaucracy was very strong and quite unrelenting, till only the thing which is finally came about in the report was that more people of the armed forces should populate the Ministry of Defense. Because one of the complaints of the Ministry of Defense were that civilian bureaucracy, with a generalist in nature, were not capable of taking decisions on issues which they had very little understanding. And that was supposed to be made up by the Naresh Chandra Committee report. You have more people in uniform. But they never came out to be. The Naresh Chandra Committee report also, very little was implemented. Meanwhile, the government changed. So we continued to be without a CDS till on the 15th of August 2019, the Prime Minister announced that India will finally have a CDS. And it was followed by the announcement at the end of the year on 30th of December that the CDS has been finally instituted. But interestingly, the form in which it came, and to deal with these two issues of integration of the armed forces with the MOD and the institution of the CDS, had something which surprised most of the people. Because the CDS now, as instituted, is also the head of a newly created Department of Military Affairs in the MOD. So what it signifies is that there is a military presence headed by the CDS, who is the head of that department, in the MOD. So this is the integration which the armed forces were seeking for a long time. But it is also, this is one hat. He's the head of department, he's CDS. And the third hat is that he's permanent chairman, Chief of Staff Committee at a level which is lower in the headquarters of the IDS. So this is a very interesting combination that one man actually wears three hats. And two of those hats are at one level in the Ministry of Defense. One hat is at the services headquarters level, integrated service headquarters level in the headquarter IDS. So this is unique in the world. And I think, Admiral, we need to discuss this issue. Let's move into this domain of relationships, because fundamentally what we are talking about is about integrating people under a common umbrella so they can plan and execute jointly. And therefore, if the Admiral can tell us his views on what has eventually come about.
So let's take a step back and go to the Naresh Chandra Committee report before I go forward. Now, I had a bitter experience of being in both the Arun Singh Task Force and the Naresh Chandra Committee. And I could see that there was a continuum of dissent in both the bodies. The Naresh Chandra Task Force Committee was dominated by bureaucrats who were quite convinced in their mind that really no change was necessary. The CDS was not an achievable institution, etc. When we asked the Ministry of Defense, the Defense Secretary came to testify. He said quite openly, he said there is no change required. We are working in perfect harmony. There's complete efficiency in the MOD, etc., etc. And the chairman himself, the late Mr. Naresh Chandra, gathered us and he says, look, let's not chase mirages. This is unimplementable and let things continue as they are. And he was very strongly of the view that no uniformed person can serve in a civilian ministry unless you bring about some radical changes in something called the central staffing scheme. Similarly, he felt that no civilian should have to serve under a uniformed person who will write his confidential report and so on. So with all these undercurrents, it became increasingly obvious that thing much is likely to happen. So the people who were looking at the military part of it, the committee, felt that the term CDS, Chief of Defense Staff, is seen as threatening by the bureaucracy and by the politicians. So let's modify it a little bit. So we decided to go the British way. The British had evolved something called the Independent Chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee. Before they went to CDS, it was a stepping stone. So we decided to follow the same route and recommended something called a Permanent Chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee, who would be the fourth member of this committee, but he would be full-time, he would be permanent for 2 or 3 years or whatever. So that's how it came about. Now, what has transpired on 31st December, the general mentioned that outwardly much of what the armed forces have been yearning for over 50, 60 years has actually been implemented by creating a Department of Military Affairs, which we had never asked for. It would seem that the military has now got a solid foothold inside the Ministry of Defense, which didn't exist for the past 60 years. So with a department which belongs to the military or is part of, or the military is a part of that department, then the military has a full stake. It's become a stakeholder in the ministry structure or the structure of the government of India, which is a very positive step. The Chief of Defense Staff has been given a couple of other hats, which has happened in other countries also. The question now is of relativities. So if the Chief of Defense Staff, he's a 4-star general, just like the 3 chiefs who are also 4-star generals, their pay grade is the same as that of the Cabinet Secretary of the Government of India, who's the senior most bureaucrat. Everybody else, all secretaries come below that. So now if you designate the Chief of Defense Staff as a Secretary of the Department of Military Affairs, then you're actually equating him with the secretaries of the Government of India, which is one step lower. Now, it may seem like semantics or quibbling over minor issues, but it is likely to set off a wrong precedence, and there can be difficulties later on. The interaction between this department and other departments. A more practical way would have been to keep the Chief of Defense Staff above everybody else and make the Vice Chief of Defense Staff, or create a Vice Chief of Defense Staff and make him the Secretary of the Department of Defense. So now the CDS has various instrumentalities at his disposal. He is the Chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee, and in wearing that hat, he can confer with the 3 chiefs and find out what their plans, intentions are, and modulate them. Then he is Secretary, Department of Defense. He can interact with the Government of India and get policies and strategies formulated and implemented. And of course, he's also an advisor to the National Command Authority, which is a very important assignment in the nuclear command chain. Now, unfortunately, there's a caveat here. This was the right moment to get our house in order. So far, it is the Defense Secretary, who is the Secretary, Department of Defense, who has been designated as responsible for the defense of India and every part thereof, and for preparation for war, which was clearly an aberration. This was the time to have shifted this responsibility to the Chief of Defense Staff, who's a uniformed person. He heads all the armed forces. Not only have they failed to do this, they've also added another charter to the Secretary, Department of Defense, which is to make policy for defense of India. Again, that charter should have been given to the CDS. So let me pause here, General, for your reactions to what I've said.
You know, even in the group of ministers report, that is Arun Singh Task Force, this issue about the CDS and the defense secretary is covered there. That while the CDS would be, in terms of his ranking, equivalent to a cabinet secretary, the working relationship between the defense secretary and the CDS should be harmonized, and not, because that, they said, was matter of precedence of warrant. And ideally, I agree with you, should have had a VCDS out there who should have been designated as a secretary. But be that as it may, in this particular situation, we have no choice, and I think it can work as long as both these people and the other secretaries realize that they need to work together, because even in the GM report, it said that the defense secretaries can, although being of lower status than the chiefs, should be able to convene conferences which the chiefs should attend, and vice versa. All this is laid down in that, and they had looked at it. So this is one point. The second one is actually about the issue of the fact that the CDS, who wears the hat of the COSC, is obviously now, as far as service is concerned, the permanent chairman chief of staff. So even if you look at the level, the MOD is supposed to actually look at policy. But at the higher level, I agree, policy and strategy would merge. So ideally, it would have been that you had the headquarter ideas in the Ministry of Defense. You would have had a policy vertical and would have had a strategy vertical. So military strategy would have to be derived from policy, which would be made by the CDS, and strategy would have been made by his wearing the hat of permanent chairman, chief of staff, along with the others. You may merge the two, but policy and strategy is what the main dialogue of civil-military relations is about. That you can't make a policy without actually having a dialogue with the military. And the military can't make a strategy without actually having a dialogue about what policy is telling us to do. And I think this is essential to understand, and in the present situation, it can be managed as long as they understand that there is a policy domain and there is a strategy domain. So let me just take this, that if you have a national security strategy and it comes from the National Security Council, it will come to the Ministry of Defense. Now the Ministry of Defense, from that national strategy, has to actually take out its own policy objective. And the Ministry of Defense can only do that after consultations with the CDS, who has to be responsible for it, because he's the man who's the main expert in that subject. So in this case, you are doing both. You have to consult with the civilians, and you have in other departments, and you have to consult with down below. So the CDS can play this role. See, I don't think it's a perfect thing, but I think what has come about is a major step and a crucial reform which we've been talking about for 70 years. And I must compliment that this government has done it in a manner which has surprised everybody. Nobody expected, as the Admiral said, the Department of Military Affairs. So I think this differentiation between headquarter ideas basically deals with military strategy, MOD deals with policy, the rest down below deal with operations and tactics. So I think we need to actually see this difference in the organizational structure. So Admiral, I don't know whether you have anything to say on that.
I generally agree with what you're saying, because once the government has made a strategy, then it hands it over to the Ministry of Defense. And in actual fact, once the shooting starts, the defense minister could very well be managing operations, could be sitting in the MO directorate, and major strategic decisions will have to come from him or maybe from the Prime Minister. So agreed, there should be complete synergy between policy, strategy, etc. The other point I wish to make is that the first CDS should consider himself as a pioneer, and he should lay down sort out all these wrinkles and establish working relationships wherever there are little irritants. So I think it will take a major part of the first CDS's tenure to iron out wrinkles, establish working relationships, and set up a mechanism which will move ahead. I think he should resist the temptation of getting down to the nuts and bolts and starting things moving, which possibly his successor will be able to do. Right now, it is important to get proper, well-oiled, functional working relationships going.
Absolutely. I mean, we can only hope the best for him, because he's got a major challenge at hand. It's not going to be easy, and it will take a lot of time before an equilibrium of relationship is actually finally accepted. But I just want to also cover your point about the defense secretary being responsible for the defense of India. Now that the CDS is in the Ministry of Defense, I completely agree with the Admiral that there is no reason why the CDS should not be given this responsibility, and this responsibility be listed in the annotation of business rules. So, I would actually think that one of the most important things, which actually now it's beyond debate, the government has done, and I must say this is wonderful, that the government has mandated the CDS to actually formulate and create the theatre commands, the joint theatre commands. This puts it beyond debate within the armed forces, because the natural opposition for this came from the Indian Air Force, and I think it still does, and also sometimes from the army. It has only been the Navy which has actually been pushing for theatre commands for a very long time, and the Admiral himself has actually been very active on this front. So let's now talk about theatre commands. And Admiral, could you just tell us, what do you think about it?
For a country of the size of India, and given our multi-directional, multi-dimensional threats, there is no way that one single service can manage to combat all these threats on its own. There will inevitably have to be a certain amount of synergy, cooperation, coordination, jointness. There are various names for it, but it has to be done systematically. Right now, the way it's happening is that people take a lot of pride. You'll find many old veterans saying proudly how I managed this operation because my friend or coursemate happened to be in the different service. So I picked up the phone and I spoke to him and said, give me an aircraft or troops or ships or whatever. It doesn't work that way. There's got to be an institutional mechanism which will rise to the occasion when a threat arises. And that the only way to do it is through what are called theatre commands or regional command, whatever term you want to give it. And the charter of the CDS, if I am up to date, says he is to facilitate restructuring of military commands for optimal utilization of resources by bringing about jointness, etc. So there's a little bit of flexibility given to him how he restructures the command. They can be regional command, they can be theatre command, whatever you want to call it. But you will have to share assets, share resources under a single point command. Right now, in any given operations, there are at least 3 or 4 commands involved, and these commands are geographically displaced. The only way they can talk to each other is over telephones or radios or whatever. It's the most inefficient way of doing things. There is an overlap of command and control, etc. So a joint theatre, regional, whatever you call it, commands have to be implemented, and the 3 services have to accept that they will have to share their resources. They will have to put their own resources under somebody else's command, which comes with great difficulty, especially to the Air Force, and they will have to just accept the role of a second fiddle under a commander who may not belong to your own force. So this is going to be a great challenge. Now the only thing is that we don't need to follow any template which has been followed by other countries. The US template is not suited to us. Britain doesn't have any overseas, other powers, etc. But we must need to realize that to say that we are not an expeditionary nation or expeditionary force is now a misplaced understanding. India is a regional power. It has got responsibilities. It's got interests overseas. You will have to reach out to your friends, to your adversaries across the seas. We've already done it in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Maldives. So we have to think like that. And there, in that situation, all 3 services must plan together, train together, and learn how to operate together. I'm not going to suggest anything. I think you are much more qualified to suggest how theatre command should be formed. But all I want to say is that each situation will have its own solutions. So one mustn't try and force fit any particular pattern on it. Over to you.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, to me personally, the mandate for the theatre command is actually a revolution in India's military affairs, because this is a weakness that we actually have 17 operational commands, all geographically separated. There's no way you can fight a modern war being geographically separate. In most of the cases, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force have to sit together, plan together, and execute together. And I think the structural change which is going to come about, and it's not going to be easy, will not only save resources, it will make India's military effectiveness, it will enhance its military effectiveness much more. So I think that's the great promise which is in hold. But in the end, as we have seen with the group of ministers report and its implementation, it is finally human agency which will actually make the difference. The people who make it happen. And that is also going to be very challenging. But I think we should wish them well. And I think the creation of the CDS, the mandate for the theatre commands are great milestones in India's defense reforms. But those milestones will have meaning only if we actually convert political intention into military reality. And that's going to be the challenge for military leadership. So I think that the CDS story as we know it now has been a long one. It's come about. The transition is not going to be easy. Like all changes, it will be opposed, it will be delayed, but we must not be under any illusion that we can avoid it, because now the political mandate is very clear, that he has been told that you will facilitate. And just one point which I would like to make is the CDS, in the CDS hat, he has no operational role, but he has to have an operational role when he wears the hat of the Chairman Chief of Staff, which is already there and which will continue. So to say that the theatres will finally not come up, or will not have the CDS on the top because he has no operational role, it will actually be the Chairman Chief of Staff. In that hat will be the theatre command. So the argument that she has not been mandated to do it, I think, doesn't hold any water. So that's our CDS story. Unless the Admiral wants to add on to it.
Well, one last word of advice, if I may, which may or may not go down well with various quarters, is that the reform process, the jointness, etc., has been resisted from within the services for a long time. Let's not shy away from that fact. And the resistance partly has come for the reason that the army is so dauntingly overwhelming in strength that the other two services often feel that if an army person were to become CDS, then, their interests would be damaged. In the case of the Air Force, this fear is very real because it's happened in the past. So I think present incumbent should be very sensitive about this issue, that he, being from the dominating service, should not let the other two services feel that there is going to be bias in his decision making, or there's going to be his own color of uniform is going to influence any of his decision. That will send a very reassuring message to the other two services. And the other thing is that we hope that the CDS will be a rotational appointment, not rotational in that sense, but any of the three services could throw up a 4-star officer who would qualify to become Chief of Defence Staff. So in that context, the creation of a separate rank badge to be worn by the Chief of Defence Staff, I thought was not quite appropriate, because it sends a message that this appointment is reserved for the army. I think that point needs to be taken note of to send the right message out.
Yeah, you've made that point earlier, and I couldn't agree with you more, that he has to wear a neutral uniform. It cannot be of a particular service. So the CDS story is ongoing, and I think probably in a couple of years we can review it.
Admiral, General, thank you for this tour de force of a conversation on the Indian Chief of Defence Staff, the history, the strategy, the reform, and the future. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in till the end. Please share this episode with a friend on social media, WhatsApp, or anywhere else. It would mean the world to us. And in case you're listening via iTunes or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and a review. Subscribe to BIC Talks on email or your favorite podcast app, and don't miss out on future episodes. This episode of BIC Talks has Gaurav Krishna as our sound engineer, with support from S. Sarvanaraj and Lekha Naidu. And the accompanying episode artwork was made by Chandni Venkataraman.
Thank you for listening to this episode of BIC Talks. This podcast can be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org, as well as on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in for new episodes every week, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages to stay informed on our latest updates.